We're kicking off with Raw, where Drew McIntyre explained his heinous attack on CM Punk from the previous week, which resulted in Punk being hospitalized and his beloved bracelet being destroyed. McIntyre began by mocking CM Punk's cheers before saying he's not ready to let the Chicago-made star move on to the world title picture, especially given how often Punk has cost him. McIntyre gloated about ending the best in the world before turning his attention to his friend and Raw commentator Wade Barrett, but seemed disappointed in the former Nexus leader. The Scottish Warrior announced that Barrett got in his way last week while he attacked Punk and warned Wade not to do that again, but at that moment, Adam Pearce came out. Pearce was disgusted by McIntyre's attack last week and ordered him to return to the ring so that the Raw general manager could give him some news. Pearce shared that he'd spoken to Punk, who said he wasn't done with McIntyre, and announced a third PLE match between the two, this time for WWE's Bad Blood. Not only will they face off again, but this match will be inside Hell in a Cell, shocking McIntyre, but exciting the fans who were at the show. Fans won't have to wait until October 5th to see CM Punk again though, as after the beating he took last week, it was confirmed on Raw that he'll be back on next week's episode of Raw. Punk has never been one to keep quiet, and expect the best in the world to have plenty to say as he prepares to enter Hell in a Cell for the first time in 11 years. The other big takeaway from this segment was the introduction of a potential program between McIntyre and Barrett, which would presumably see the in-ring return of the Bad News Bearer. It was an interesting development and one that made sense given the context of what we saw last week, as well as the pro-McIntyre stance Barrett had at the Clash at the Castle post-show. But what are your thoughts on CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre's upcoming Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood that was announced on Raw? Sound off in the comments. While Drew McIntyre destroyed CM Punk's bracelet last week, WWE fans can now get their own replica, as the company is selling copies of the bracelet on WWEshop.com. On Twitter, Victoria, the creator of the original bracelet, shared that the item was supposed to be a gift for Punk, not the whole world, and seemed disappointed with the new piece of merch. We don't know if Victoria will receive any sort of compensation for her bracelet now being used as a template for merch, and what do you think of this? Let us know down below. On the 1000th episode of Raw in July 2012, the Red Brand moved to a 3-hour format, but now the era of these 180-minute shows is set to come to an end. During the season premiere of Raw this week, which was a part of WWE Week on the USA Network, it was announced via Twitter that WWE will transition back to a 2-hour format. That change will come into effect starting October 7th, with shows running from 8/7 Central to 10/9 Central, and this will continue until the final episode of Raw on the USA Network on December 30th. After that, WWE Raw will make its highly anticipated move to Netflix starting with its January 6th episode. This change in format could signal a streamlined approach as WWE prepares to move to streaming. What are your thoughts on Raw going back to 2 hours? Do you think this will impact the show's pacing and excitement? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. WWE content will be undergoing a ton of changes soon enough, including Smackdown returning to the USA Network this week with a huge show lined up. With Smackdown returning to USA while Raw will soon depart, there has been speculation that Smackdown could become a 3-hour show, but that will not be happening. Though an image has been circulated online suggesting that Smackdown on USA will be 3 hours, this is a fake image, and USA's actual listing has the show remaining at 2 hours long. Fightful Select has also commented that Smackdown will remain a 2-hour show, so expect to tune in to the Blue brand at your usual time, even after the move to the USA Network this week. At AEW All Out, Bryan Danielson defended the AEW World Championship against Jack Perry, but this match could have, and arguably should have, ended earlier than it did. In a clip that's gone viral among fans, Danielson can be seen pinning Perry, but as referee Bryce Remsburg counts the pin, he pushes Perry's leg, helping him kick out. This clip is going viral online, and AEW hasn't made any efforts to edit this botch. Also during the match, Danielson accidentally clocked Remsburg with a flying knee that was meant to be for Perry, and on Twitter, Bryce shared the black eye he legitimately suffered. Remsburg joked that taking a black eye from the AEW World Champion is a workplace hazard, but what did you think of his officiating and helping Perry to kick out of the pin at All Out last week? With WWE Bad Blood less than a month away, the build to the show began in earnest on Raw, as it was confirmed that Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley will face off at the October 5th PLE. This match for Morgan's Women's World title will be a rematch from SummerSlam, where Dominik Mysterio turned on Mommy, and is an overdue title defense for Liv. After all, Morgan has made just 2 televised title defenses since winning the gold back in May, and this wasn't the only match confirmed for Bad Blood. Later on Raw, Morgan's Judgment Day ally Finn Balor challenged Damian Priest to a match at Bad Blood, and the former World Heavyweight Champion was happy to accept. Priest and Ripley triumphed over Morgan and Mysterio at Bash in Berlin, and now they want more payback on the Judgment Day, but things took a turn for the Terror Twins on Raw. After Priest agreed to the Balor match, the Judgment Day laid out their former member, and Ripley, using a crutch after suffering a recent kayfabe injury, hobbled down to the ring. Before she could make it, Liv came running up behind her, but the expectant Ripley shoved the crutch into Liv's gut before slapping Dominik in the face and also hitting him with the crutch. Mysterio's distraction, though, allowed Morgan time to recover and take out Ripley's injured leg, and though Rhea made it to the ring, Liv pounced and beat her with her own crutch. As the Judgment Day continued the beatdown of both Ripley and Priest, Jey Uso ran out to make the save, 1 week after teaming with Priest to beat Balor and JD McDonough in non-title action. After this segment, it was announced that Ripley had been sent to a local medical facility, and who do you think should win in the matches announced for Bad Blood? The Judgment Day proved to be dominant on this week's Raw, and alongside Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley, the group has added a new target, The New Day. During Raw, Kofi Kingston surprised Xavier Woods by revealing that he's secured them a WWE World Tag Team title match against the current champions, Finn Balor and JD McDonough. This title defense, set for next week's Raw, will be their first since winning the titles over 2 months ago. And how do you think the New Day will fare against the Judgment Day next week? More from the Judgment Day as Dominik Mysterio defeated Dragon Lee on Raw thanks to the interference of Liv Morgan, who clipped the knee of Lee. Dropping Lee onto the ropes set up the masked superstar for a 619 and a frog splash combo from Dirty Dom, and this was a perfectly acceptable match. If WWE wants to rebuild the Judgment Day after their Bash in Berlin loss, this match helped to do so and continued to put heat on the loathsome duo of Morgan and Mysterio. Before AEW All Out, Hangman Page took his feud with Swerve Strickland to a fiery new level by burning down the childhood home of Strickland that Swerve had recently purchased. Many questioned why Page hadn't been arrested for this clear act of arson, and Fightful later hinted that AEW would explain in storyline why the cowboy hasn't faced legal repercussions. It was also on Fightful's podcast that Sean Ross Sapp shared that people in AEW are very happy about this angle, and that the house burned was the same one shown in a video about Swerve's purchase. It was stated that AEW wouldn't have gone through the trouble of doing all that setup if they were going to bait and switch the homes, and this gave another layer to their all-out match. With that violent encounter fresh in the minds of fans, many are left wondering what's next for these two, as Page and Strickland have unfinished business with one another. On the podcast, Sapp also shared that the Arson segment almost went disastrously wrong, as Page came dangerously close to injuring himself while filming. There was a small crew. They also had firefighters there and all that. That was also an honest-to-God shot of Hangman on the side of the house. The fire was very close to him, I'm told. There were some who said that it was very close to him catching a blaze. Thankfully, Page wasn't injured and was able to deliver an unforgettable match at All Out with Strickland, though one some fans think went too far. On Twitter, a fan shared a petition calling for the removal of AEW programming due to disturbing and harmful content, and included examples from last week's All Out. The fan included Strickland having a hypodermic needle shoved in his mouth, and Bryan Danielson being suffocated with a plastic bag by Jon Moxley after his match. AEW All Out was a huge show, but did they push the limits too far? Fans and critics alike have been divided, and we'll have to see how this story unfolds. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments. Now, Braun Breaker has been awaiting a new challenger for his Intercontinental title, and after 4 triple threat matches, a 4-way took place on Raw to determine his next opponent. From the opening bell, Jey Uso, Braun Strowman, Pete Dunne, and Ilya Dragunov delivered fast and furious action, with Strowman flexing his strength after a commercial break. The Yeet Army were firmly behind Jey Uso as he battled with Pete Dunne, and when all 4 men were out of the ring, a spot that saw Strowman collide with the steel steps earned a "This is awesome" chant. Strowman was able to get back into the mix though, but just as it seemed like he was going to regain control, Bronson Reed stormed in and took out the monster among men. This shocking return from Reed was particularly notable as he had missed last week's Raw due to COVID, and his attack ultimately turned this into a triple threat. In the end, Jey Uso hit his splash to earn a win and a shot at the title, and this was easily the match of the night in which all 4 men and Bronson Reed delivered in spades. The interactions between Dragunov and Dunne were every bit as good as one would expect, and Uso remains the picture of consistency in terms of crowd heat and participation. With Jay's popularity still at a fever pitch, it would be wise to put his title match with Breakker on the Bad Blood card in what'll be an epic showcase for both men for the Workhorse title. Given that Raw was in Calgary, it was only fitting that Bret Hart was on the show, and Joe Tessitore and Wade Barrett were in the ring to invite the Hitman out. Despite reports of ill health, Bret earned an ecstatic reaction from the Calgary crowd, far exceeding anyone else who'd appeared on the show. The fans obviously knew how special it was to have Bret back on WWE programming, and as the roars settled down, it was confirmed that Survivor Series will head to Vancouver this November. Barrett asked Bret what it's like to be back in the ring in Calgary, and the Hitman proudly stated that no one took more pride in being a champion than he did. Hart spoke about being a Canadian champion, who he said are ready to take on any challenger, and at that moment, Gunther made his entrance. The World Heavyweight Champion poked fun at Hart's legacy, reducing Bret's catchphrase to merely "the best there was," while Gunther claimed to be the best there is and ever will be. The Austrian wasn't done as he named Bill Goldberg as his favorite wrestler, drawing the ire of the crowd who are well aware of the Hitman's past with Goldberg. In case you didn't know, Hart has spent decades burying Goldberg in interviews, making it clear how little he thinks of Bill as a wrestler and as a performer. It was during a match at WCW's Starrcade 1999 that Goldberg hit Bret with a mule kick to the head, which directly resulted in the end of the Hitman's legendary in-ring career. Sami Zayn then emerged to defend the Calgary icon and criticized Gunther for being reluctant to defend his World Heavyweight Championship. Hart said Gunther's hesitation to face Sami came from a place of cowardice, striking a nerve with the champion and triggering a brawl between Gunther and Zayn. WWE officials ultimately pulled the two apart, and Zayn was left to receive a hug from Hart and the uproarious applause from the Scotiabank Saddledome. Zayn wore the Calgary Flames jersey of Johnny Gaudreau, who tragically died last month at the age of 31, and WWE would later air a tribute to Gaudreau and his brother Matthew. The pair were killed by an alleged drunk driver last month, and Johnny leaves behind 2 children and his wife Meredith, who shared during his memorial that she is pregnant. This was a perfectly fine use of Hart, whose influence in both men is obvious, and his connection to the Canadian crowd helped firmly establish Zayn as Gunther's next challenger. While it would have been nice to hear more from Bret, what he delivered was crisp, clear, and to the point, much like his wrestling during his heyday. While Gunther has rejected Sami's demand for a title shot, it's clear that this match will be announced shortly, but what are you expecting from this match? Will WWE further elevate Gunther as a heel by feeding Zayn to him, or will Sami shock everyone and bring Gunther's reign as a champion to a swift end? Sound off down below. More from Raw as a street fight between the Wyatt Six and American Made kicked off the show, as WWE wanted to start their season premiere and WWE Week with a bang. Nikki Cross immediately targeted Ivy Nile, and with weapons scattered around the ring, all 8 superstars in this match were locked in a brutal battle. Cross punished Nile with a trash can while the male members of the Macabre faction, minus Uncle Howdy, took out their American-made counterparts. Rowan was sent through the announce table and buried under weapons as American-made tried to take out their opponents one by one. Joe Gacy fired back with a double clothesline, and things got even more violent when Rowan used a piece of barricade to lay out American-Made before dominating the Creeds in the ring. As the destruction continued, there was plenty for everyone to do in this match, but it wasn't until the end that Uncle Howdy made his presence felt, nailing Chad Gable with a Sister Abigail before Dexter Lumis delivered a top rope leg drop for the win. This was a wild way to start Raw as the match was packed with intensity but never crossed the line between sports entertainment and gratuitous violence. As the Wyatt Six stood tall in the ring with flickering lights, it was clear that they are a force to be reckoned with, and it'll be interesting to see who the faction targets next. Notably, the leader of the Wyatt Six was not officially involved in the bout. Instead, Uncle Howdy sat at ringside for the majority of the contest. He eventually got involved, albeit in an unofficial capacity, thanks to the interference allowed by the match, but he was not technically part of the match. So far, Uncle Howdy's only match since returning to the promotion was in the main event of Monday Night Raw. That match felt important, which is seemingly the goal. That could be exactly why Uncle Howdy wasn't included in the match on the red brand. Triple H may want Uncle Howdy to only wrestle on occasion so he comes across as a special attraction. Additionally, if Howdy competes, it will likely only be in a main event spot or a major event. Competing in the opening bout of Raw just wouldn't work if the goal is to make Howdy feel important. WWE may want to have Uncle Howdy and Chad Gable clash one more time. Additionally, his absence also allowed the other members of the Wyatt Six to shine. What have you made of the Wyatt Six booking so far? Who should they go after next? Is a program with the Judgment Day too early for the faction? Let us know down below. In recent weeks, Tony D'Angelo's family has hit a proverbial brick wall in the form of Oba Femi, who has been able to fend off all challenges from the Don and his crew. Now it looks like Tony is bringing him some outside help, as the NXT Anonymous account shared a video of D'Angelo speaking to somebody who the camera couldn't make out. The silhouette made clear that this person is big, and D'Angelo said that this person isn't afraid to get their hands dirty, and that he wants this person to take out Oba Femi. But who do you think D'Angelo has brought in to handle the NXT North American Champion? A superstar returning from injury? A debuting prospect? Maybe someone from TNA? Give your predictions down below. On this week's NXT, TNA's The Rascals were supposed to challenge Axiom and Nathan Frazier for the NXT Tag Team Championships, but unfortunately, that match won't take place. NXT GM Ava shared on Twitter that the Rascals won't be able to compete in the scheduled match, and shared that the Street Profits will challenge for the gold instead. Ava explained that conspicuous circumstances are keeping Zachary Wentz and Trey Miguel from the match, and we hope to provide an update as to why plans had to change. Right now, few women in WWE have more momentum than Tiffany Stratton, who has Miss Money in the Bank, has a golden future ahead of her, and is poised to be a top star in the division. Now we have an idea as to what WWE has planned for Stratton next year, as during the Dirty Sheets podcast, it was reported that Stratton will face Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 41. It was added that the match will be for the WWE Women's Championship, and also signals Flair will be back on TV and back in the ring before April of next year. What's your take on WWE's plans for Tiffany Stratton? Do you think she has what it takes to defeat Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 41? Let us know in the comments section. At WWE Bash in Berlin, Cody Rhodes retained his undisputed WWE title against Kevin Owens, and while Owens didn't turn heel as many predicted, their program reportedly isn't over yet. According to the Wrestling Informer podcast, the plan is still for Owens to turn on Rhodes, and WWE intends to get another premium live event match out of the two. This potential turn makes sense, as Owens' storyline leading up to Bash in Berlin was centered on doubts about deserving a title match that was offered to him by Cody. Despite those doubts, Owens got the match and lost, but interestingly, didn't seem too affected by the defeat after all was said and done. Owens is notorious for turning on his friends, a theme that was played up in his feud with Rhodes ahead of Berlin, and we'll have to see if Rhodes is the next victim of Kevin Owens. What's your take on Kevin Owens possibly getting another shot at the undisputed title? Let us know in the comments section. When Kiana James was drafted to Raw this year, she defeated Natalya in her debut match on June 3rd and competed in a Money in the Bank qualifier 2 weeks later. That match was won by Io Sky and marked James' most recent Raw match, and this week, PW Insider reported that James had been removed from the active roster. The Raw star has been removed due to a significant leg injury that is expected to keep her sidelined for up to 6 months, and we're sending our best to Kiana James on her recovery. Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill retained their WWE Women's Tag Team titles on this week's Raw, besting the Unholy Union, who earned a shot at the gold last week. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn beat Io Sky and Kairi Sane to earn the title match, but this title match was on the shorter side compared to the bout we saw at Bash in Berlin. Nevertheless, the champions and the Unholy Union once again delivered solid action and in-ring chemistry, and Belair continues to be an absolute workhorse on the roster. Meanwhile, Jade Cargill has thrived as the recipient of an explosive hot tag, a formula that has benefited her since coming to WWE, and Fire and Dawn once again had great chemistry. The Unholy Union have been underrated and undervalued by many until recently, and this was a fun match in the evolution of WWE's women's tag team division. But what did you think of the match? Was the champions retaining the right call? Let us know down in the comments. Sonya Deville, Zoe Stark, and Shayna Baszler faced off against Zelina Vega and Lyra Valkyria on Raw, but the faces were short one member, leaving fans to wonder who joined them. While Sonya Deville mocked Lyra for not having a partner to take on the Pure Fusion Collective, the heel's confidence faded once Natalya's music hit to a huge pop in Calgary. The hometown hero made her return to Raw after quite some time away, but much of the match unfortunately occurred during a commercial break. When the match was shown, it saw a hot tag to the Queen of Hearts, who made a comeback for the faces and earned the submission win for her team with a sharpshooter on Zoe Stark. The match was exactly what it needed to be. It highlighted Natalya, giving her a much-deserved homecoming victory, and potentially putting an end to the rivalry with PFC. This was the first time Natalya had appeared on Raw since June, and her first win on Raw since November 20th of last year, when she and Tegan Nox won a 4-way tag match. During her 9-month losing streak on the Red brand, Natalya signed a new deal with WWE, and now she's back on TV, she can turn over a new leaf. With Survivor Series coming to Canada, it's likely Natalya will be pushed following her return, and she could be the one to challenge whoever holds the Women's World title after Bad Blood. The revival of the Judgment Day continued on Raw with Finn Balor's attack on Rey Mysterio in a showdown of two of the most influential superstars of their respective eras. Balor trapped Rey in the ropes and refused to break his half-Boston Crab by the official's 5 count, but the Irish superstar wasn't done punishing the masked legend. Balor attacked Mysterio with 2 shotgun dropkicks that sent Rey into the ring post, then apron, before standing over him and talking trash as medical personnel tended to Mysterio. This vicious side is what we've been waiting to see for Finn, who, after betraying Priest at SummerSlam, has continued to lose his edge coming out of that show. Instead of capitalizing on SummerSlam, Balor has been beaten down and treated like an afterthought, but this week's Raw rebuilt him in one night. It'll be up to Triple H and the creative team to make sure that momentum continues building heading into Bad Blood to avoid giving the impression that Priest will steamroll him next month. And that was Raw. And what did you think of the show? Let us know below, and thanks for watching.